In the previous video, we set up our project page and we designed the header. Now it's time for the content. So the content of the page, we actually want to appear in the middle and not stretch out too much like this. So we want to avoid these really long lines of text. So what we'll do is we'll set a max width. So here in my page, I'm going to say .page. So select the page and set the max width to 900 pixels. And that will move the whole thing. We'll give it a max width, as you can see here, but it moves everything to the side. To center this, we're going to use a automatic margin on the left and on the right, and that will make sure that the content is centered. Now, this looks okay on desktop. There is some padding that we need to do here at the top and the bottom, but it sort of looks okay. But if we go into responsive mode, so with inspect element, and we switch to our responsive mode, once we start dragging, you see that we have our text squished to the side here. And that's because our margins, our automatic margins, are now set to 0. But we do need this extra bit of space. And to do that, we're not going to use margins, but we're using padding. So we're going to use some padding left of 2 rems and some padding right of 2 rems, and that will add some little padding here that we can use. And while we're at it, we'll also add some padding top of 2 rem and a padding bottom as well of 5 rem. Right. Now we want this element to appear in white, but we can't really add the background white here, and you'll see why if I do it this way, and just to make sure also add the color, so make it a bit grayish. This works, but once we start dragging, you see that it's the actual box because this is set to a max width. So we can't use that part to style. Instead, we'll use the parent element, so not the page, but the main element. That's the one we're going to style. It's not going to style the page header because that has its own background, but it will style the whole the other thing. So I'm going to add that here on top, and I'm adding it here on top because it also appears here before the page itself. You don't have to, but it's easier that way. And here I'm just going to cut these lines out and paste them in here, and that will give us our basic page here. And now we're ready to add our first image. And to do that, I'm going to use a image tag, obviously, but I'm going to wrap it in a figure tag. And you might remember the figure tag from the tribute page we made all the way back in lesson 1. The figure tag is basically a frame around an image tag. The interesting part up here is that it can also be used to add a caption with fake caption and put the image and the caption together. So here I'm going to write image, img, it's in a folder called frequency, and then the first one is splash, and I'm just going to call it frequency. So this is the name of our image. So if you refresh, we see the image here. Nice, that works. And we're going to add some more text here just to fill it up. So add another paragraph here below the figure tag, so P, save. And I'm going to copy and paste this, so add another figure just to have something to work with. And here I press Control space to make it complete the closeup.jpg. And then I'll write closeup of frequency, save. So I have something to work with. So I have this thing, some text, and then this thing. And now I can add some more styling. So first, the paragraphs, they're a bit too close for my liking. So I'm going to add a line height of 1.8 and also set the margin bottom to a bit more, so to have a bit more spacing here. I also would like that this first paragraph, this intro paragraph, is a bit bigger. So I'm going to add a class here called big. And remember from the previous page that we also had a class called big, right? So this page also has a class big, that's this text, but it doesn't appear here because it's scoped, it's set, it's limited to only the section intro, right? So it's not using the entire page, but it's limited to the section. And this is generally a good idea to do. So here as well, we're not going to write p.big, but we're going to write .page and then write p.big. So the big paragraphs on the page, what we want to do, well, we want to set the font size to 2 rems, for example. Now they're a bit bigger. Maybe this is a bit too big, so 1.5. something like this. It's a bit of a huge block of text, so maybe make that intro text a bit smaller. Right. And then another thing that you notice is that the images don't really run all the way to the side, and that's because our figure tag, so our image does actually, but our figure tag has some extra padding, as you can see here. We didn't actually set that, but it's because the user agent or browser has a default style sheet built in. So this user agent style sheet provides a margin start, so a top one, bottom one, left, right. And to get rid of that, we're going to write our own. So we're going to also write .page figure. So figures inside of our page shouldn't have a margin like this. So and now they run all the way to the side, which is cool. The only problem is here that this thing and this thing is a bit too close. So this text is a bit too close after that. And so I'm going to add some margin bottom here. Maybe write 2 rems to add that to the page. Cool. Now, be careful here to not do it the other way around, because this sets the margin for everything and margin bottom is then overwritten by the previous one. So now it doesn't apply because this is applying to everything, and so this line no longer works because we set margin bottom of 2 rems, and also set the margin to 0 everywhere. So we have to do it the other way around. Basically say set the margin everywhere to 0, but then also set the margin bottom to 2 rems. So that's the better way that we can work. Right, and then if we refresh, we see this happening. And then one last thing that I want to do here is I want to make a second block, but I want to add 2 figures next to each other, like so, like this. And the way that works is I'm going to write a div to group them together, write 2 columns. And again, this name I choose, it's not the browser. And I'm just going to copy and paste this twice, and then change the name from close-up to exhibition 1, and then this one is exhibition 2, again with control space, right? And they will appear below each other, of course, because we haven't set any styling. But to style them, I'm going to add here page 2 columns, and for this, because it's I'm going to use the same thing that we use for gallery, so I'm going to use display grid. And here I'm going to say, well, I want the grid template columns, so I want some columns. And I could just write 2, so repeat 2. But specifically what I want to do here is wrap them to 1 column if the screen's too small. So we have to do it the correct way. We have to repeat, basically say automatically fill up the available space that you have, and use min-max to define the minimum and the maximum size. So the minimum size in my case is 350 pixels. That's the smallest that I want the image to be. And the maximum size is just whatever you have. So 1 fur is basically take whatever free space you have. So that works, but you see that they're right next to each other. So we can also add a bit of grid gap, 20 pixels, to add a little bit of spacing there. Cool. So that's it for the basic layout of our page. There's one more thing that I want to show, and that's how to embed a YouTube movie, but we'll do that in the next video.